Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Dialogue with the Youth so on Gunjur Online TV. Once again, good evening to all of you. Welcome you today, Wednesday, 30th of June, 2021. The time is 7 o'clock UK time. Gambian time, the time is 6 o'clock, and Eastern time, same about 6 past 2 o'clock. Once again, we are here on our Wednesday program. But our topic today is we have a special interview on migration. It is a burning issue globally, but specifically Gambia. And we have a towering intellectual with us today to talk about migration, not only focusing on Gambians ones, but strangely, why should somebody in UK, from Wiltshire, a small town, be interested in migration and fighting for the right of migrants all over the world? These individuals crisscross the world, going back to the Calais jungle refugee camp in France to voluntarily, in his retirement, to help refugees from all over the world who are stranded in an appalling condition, giving them first aid, giving them clothes, underpants, and whatever he can to help them, and also campaign and lobby into government so that the minors, the kids under 18, under 16 years, can be allowed to come and seek asylum in the UK and be granted UK. Once again, I introduce an intellectual, Dr. Nick Maurice, a retired physician from Wiltshire. Welcome, Doctor, to Dialogue with the Youth so on Gunjur Online TV.
Lamin, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that very kind introduction. Ebrima, you're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm not saying anything wrong here. It's all facts, whatever I'm saying, so I'm not being a press singer here. I'm just saying, what I discover about you. Doctor, once again, thank you so much. We are so much honored and appreciate it a lot on behalf of Gunjur Online and all our viewers all over the world to have you once again to talk about issues that affects, our communities. We are one world. And anything that's happening in the other side of the world now can affect the other side of the world. And Doctor, we are going to start with a surprising question to me, actually. You were born, brought up, educated, and have lived and worked in a small, tiny, white communities, sorry to say that, in Marlborough in UK throughout your life. Were you ever tempted to migrate to another country? Because virtually you have everything, series and series of generations and generation of doctors, and you've been part of that, that procession of doctors from your family. Were you ever tempted to migrate to somewhere and live there or whatever? Go ahead, Doctor.
Well, I think in a sense it was because of my rootedness in my community of Marlborough that that gave me a kind of self-confidence to want to explore the wider world. And to a certain extent, I have migrated in the past. As anybody who has had the opportunity to read my book will know, I, at the age of 18, worked my passage on a liner and migrated to Togo in West Africa, Francophone Africa. And there I taught English for 1 year, living with a Muslim family in Togo. And that really changed my life. I felt that I now became a global citizen. I don't think I've ever been tempted to migrate permanently to another country, but following my time in Togo, while I was still a medical student, I worked in Papua New Guinea for 1 year, again, living a very basic life in a very deprived community with no access to electricity or piped water or whatever, and was able to help the sick there, but at the same time learning a great deal of medicine. I often say I learnt more medicine in Papua New Guinea than I ever did at the University of Cambridge or at the St Mary's Hospital in Paddington in London, because there I was dealing with people face to face, and I had qualified doctors with me. And then when I had got married and we had a small baby, aged 15 months, I spent 15 months with Kate, my wife, and Daisy, our daughter, aged 15 months. We traveled to Nepal, and there I worked in the field of tuberculosis control. So in a sense, that was another experience of migration. And then having qualified as a doctor and come back to work in Marlborough, I took 4 months out of my practice in Marlborough to work for Oxfam in their emergency team in Cambodia, just following the fall of the Khmer Rouge, Pol Pot, and all that terrible, terrible period of time in the Cambodia, where it was estimated that 2 million out of a total population of 6 million people died at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. And that again was a great sort of turning point in my life. But again, it was a sort of, if you like, it was a form of migration to another country. So, but to answer your question, I think because of my rootedness in Marlborough, because of the community of Marlborough, the friendliness of that community, the stability of that community, I wanted my children to grow up in that stable community rather than moving to another country and having to learn about that other country and adapt to the culture and the faith of that other country. So that's why I remained in Marlborough.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, Doctor. From Togo to Nepal to Papua New Guinea and Cambodia, even though you're not going to go and migrate, permanently, I think, even us who are here until now, we never expect that we will be here until, even 10 years or 5 years, when we were coming, we were just saying we are going to go and have our education and come back. So these experiences shape your life, and as you said in Papua New Guinea, even though you're not a qualified medical doctor, but you learn a lot of things in medicines and dealing with individuals. So that's how important it is sometimes, when you migrate and on courses like that, you can learn and get a lot of informed education informally, but very, very vital anyway. So, Doctor, but why does the question of migration interest you in the first place? Why?
Well, I was born in 1943. So I'm a very old man, age 78 now. And that, of course, was during the Second World War. And the Second World War came to an end in 1945. My parents were very keen to introduce people of different faiths and different cultures to us when we were growing up as children in Marlborough. And every summer we would have young people from, for example, France or Germany, Italy, Sweden, would come and spend a month or 2 months with us in Marlborough. From their point of view, as much as anything, to learn English. But from our point of view, here we were being introduced to people of difference for the very first time. Here we were meeting people, for example, from a Catholic tradition rather than an Anglican tradition. So Christians, but Catholics rather than Anglicans. And I think that had quite a major impact on me in terms of understanding that there is a big world out there, and also understanding, I think, that while I was rooted in Marlborough, there were many people around the world who had migrated for different reasons. I think also I began to be aware of the fact that migrants to the UK have played a huge part in improving our lives in the UK. So, for example, I look nowadays at the National Health Service. The number of people working in the National Health Service who come from other countries originally is enormous. A huge proportion of people working in the field of health in the UK have come from other countries. So I think that, again, I find that interesting that, that migrants have played such an important part in improving our lives here in the UK. I also felt that it raised the whole question in my mind of identity. Who do we think we are? I'll never forget my good friend who may be listening into this program, Lamin Manjang, when we were discussing the question of identity, and I asked him what he felt his identity was. And he said, in the Gambia, we have a saying, which is that a log of wood will float down the river, but it will never turn into a crocodile. And what he meant by that was that once you're a Gambian, whether you live in the UK for 25 years or 50 years, you are always a Gambian. So that whole question of identity came to mind. That question also was raised for me very, very sincerely when I went to a meeting in 2008 in Bristol, a meeting of Afro-Caribbeans, young Afro-Caribbeans who had been brought up in Bristol and who had heard about from their parents and their grandparents about the Windrush and how people had come across from the Caribbean to the UK on the Windrush, the ship. And they'd heard from their grandparents also about the slave trade and how slaves were sent from West Africa to the Caribbean or to the southern states to work in the cotton plantations or whatever. And they gave a presentation in Bristol, which I attended. And that presentation was following a visit that these young people had made to the Gambia. And while they were in the Gambia, they had traveled up the Gambia River to Kunta Kinte Island, and they had witnessed for themselves what had happened to their ancestors and how they had been treated on this island, how they had been starved on this island in order that they would lose weight so that they could cram more slaves onto the ships and transport them across the Atlantic to the slave encampments in the Caribbean and in the USA. And they gave a presentation about this. They showed photographs of what they had experienced. And at the end of that presentation, they said something that I will never forget. They said, "We now know who we are, and we want to give up the drugs. We want to give up the crime. We want to give up the knives. We want to do something positive." And I found that a really interesting comment that they made, that they had now understood their identity, and it gave me the picture of how important identity is in giving you the self-confidence to want to change the world for the better.
Yeah, thank you. That's so emotional, Doctor. I think in a program like taking young Black kids here and mixed race to some of these historical African countries, like not only the Gambia, but Sierra Leone and Senegal, yep. Where the slaves transit and they can learn and sometimes know some of the opportunities that they have. They are positive, they can use their energy into positive cause, that can help all the communities. I think, it will be very good if such exchange rates, where kids can go into some other places and learn their history and be proud of themselves. And and what the African Voice Forum in Kombosilla are trying now to have an African Caribbean history inject into curriculum, especially in Bristol and all those things, so that these kids can have identity. As you said, identity is important. That's why, as Lamin always said, he said, the log, no matter how long it stays in the sea, it cannot turn into crocodile. And that's why Gunjur is in my blood. And I don't know. Sometimes I think it's impossible whether I can live anywhere else other than Gunjur. So that's really a good point. And charities like us, we are going to pick these up and see what we can do so that our kids can go back and trace their roots and all those things, and they will know where they're coming from. And the Windrush thing is crazy here, and maybe we will have that discussion some other day. Doctor, so now how will you classify migration? Because maybe we are going to see it from different perspective. From maybe Gambia and you going to Togo, Nepal, Papua New Guinea, sometimes some other places. How will you classify migration?
Well, I think I classify migration really as the movement of people from one country to another with the intention either of settling permanently in that country or temporarily in that country. I mean, I think that is the definition of what migration is all about. And I think you're going to go on to ask me a question about the reasons why people migrate. And I think those reasons are, there are a multitude of reasons for why people should migrate and leave everything they know and love in their countries of origin to go to another country. And I think those reasons, they may be social reasons. It may be to go to join a family member who has already moved to a different country. It may be because of concern about the political climate in their home country, that they feel unhappy about what is happening in their own country, and feel that they need to migrate to a more stable country. I would guess that the economics of migration is probably a very strong point, that many young people I know from the UK will leave to work in the United States or in Canada or Australia, etc., because they think they will gain a better life, they'll earn more money, etc., in these other countries than they would if they were in the UK. And I suspect that applies also to many people from the Gambia who come to live in the UK, that they think that they will be better off here in the UK financially than they would be if they remained in the Gambia, which one, of course, understands. But I think there are other reasons. I think, for example, I've always had an interest in music. I've been a singer all my life, and I put on concerts regularly in Marlborough. And it is interesting that the number of musicians who, these are professional musicians, who come and perform for us in Marlborough. They come from many different countries. And I think the reason for that is because we have a culture of music which surpasses that culture in many other countries. So we have people coming to the UK from Italy, from France, from other European countries, because we have a reputation for having a very strong legacy of music in this particular country. And then, of course, the other reason that people will migrate is because they are fleeing conflict. They are refugees from conflict in their countries. I think we shall come on to the whole question of refugees later, perhaps, in this discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. Of course, Doctor, these movements, for one reason or the other, there will be consequences, there will be impacts. What do you think are the likely impacts on the country that they live in, the country that migrant left, and the country to which they moved to, and to sometimes to individual migrants, because in our Gambia case, we saw individual dying. Even today, a young Gambian got mental health and is sleeping rough in the street of Italy. He couldn't even remember who his parents, his mom and dad. And now the picture is circulating in social media for Gambian to recognize and see what they can do. And these are young people who went through a lot. So this has a huge impact on migrants, on
Yes.
where they live and the countries that they're heading to. So what do you think are the likely impacts on all these three different areas?
Well, I think as far as the country that they have left is concerned, I think that if we're talking specifically about Gambians leaving the Gambia and coming to live in the UK, I think probably by definition, the people who leave the Gambia to come to the UK are likely to be the better educated people. And you could argue, couldn't you, that therefore wouldn't it be much better if they remained in the Gambia and used that better education to help with the development of the Gambia? So, I mean, in many ways, I suspect that the Gambia is poorer for the number of migrants that have left the Gambia and are members of the diaspora, whether it be in the UK or in the US or in Scandinavia or wherever it may be. So I think that I would argue, and I suspect you would agree with me, that in many ways the Gambia is poorer for the fact that so many highly intelligent people have left the Gambia and are now living overseas. Having said that, one of the benefits for the Gambia, of course, is the fact that so many Gambians living in other countries are sending remittances home to their families. And that money, of course, is going to their families, which is obviously making a huge difference to the people at grassroots level. Whereas, one is always slightly concerned that money that is coming from, for example, the UK government to countries in Africa, it's going to the governments of those countries, and one is never quite sure what is happening to that money when it reaches that particular country. So it is estimated that three times the total amount of aid that is going into Africa from governments around the world, from NGOs like Oxfam, like the Gates Foundation and so on, three times that total amount is actually going into Africa from the diaspora, the African diaspora in different countries around the world. So the contribution that people who have left the Gambia or left other African countries are making to development in their countries of origin is obviously very, very important through that money. But at the same time, as I say, it's a pity that a lot of the intellect has left those countries and is not being used for the development of those countries. In terms of the benefits to the country to which they have moved are concerned, the benefits are, I have absolutely no doubt, are very, very important. I'm sure that if you were to do a study of the benefits that the Gambian community in the UK are bringing to the UK population, it would be astronomical. And I think I would argue that it would be really interesting to do an in-depth study of that contribution that the Gambia is making to the UK through the diaspora that are living in this country. So there's no doubt that you're making a huge difference. And I look specifically, because I come from a medical background, again, I look at the NHS and the contribution that people from different cultures are making to the National Health Service. here, and particularly at this time of the pandemic. It is incredible the difference that they are making, and we need to applaud that. In terms of the impact on the individual migrant is concerned, I'm sure that there are positive and negative impacts. We've talked about some of them. I mean, I think one of the negative impacts is that loss of a clear identity for the individual that has come to live in the UK from other countries. But on the other hand, there are many positive impacts, I've no doubt, and not least perhaps a better education than they would have received at home, greater wealth, a more global view of the world, and so forth. So I think from the individual's point of view, it's again swings and roundabouts. There are benefits, but I think there are also some downsides. And I've no doubt, and we should talk about this on a separate occasion, but I've no doubt that some of the things that you may have suffered in terms of racism and perhaps Islamophobia that you have met with from UK citizens through living in the UK, I have no doubt that that has had a very negative impact on a number of people. And we need to talk about that at some future occasion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. You are very, very right. I know diasporans are contributed in the Gambian context in continuously more than 22% to the GDP, higher than tourism and many other economic indicator sectors. And last just at the beginning or in the middle of COVID, that even sprung to nearly 48% of the GDP, because that was the only transaction when things closed. It was the diasporas who were sponsoring that economy. But on the other side, the small country of nearly 2.4 million in 2022, according to population UNDESA's data, but you have about nearly about 61% of those Gambians who migrated, about nearly 200,000, are in Europe. And that's crazy. As of June 2020, there were about 22,840 Gambians in Italy. And most of these are young people between the age of 18, 16, 14, and 24. 19,849 in Spain, 15,535 in Germany, and England. Here we have Gambian borns and Gambians here is about nearly 36,279 that is living in the UK, according to UK's Office of National Statistics estimate. And in the Nordic countries, we have about 8,653. But all in all, we have about nearly 200,000 Gambians in the diaspora, both America and other places, solely, and that's mostly the cream of that country, who have just been excoriated and are in other countries. No matter what economic impact they are having in that country, if you have all the human resources move away from any country, at the population of Gambia is about nearly 2 million, roughly, because we have about hundreds and thousands of people who are also migrant in the Gambia, but they are not Gambian, they're still there. And that's the UN data, might be, we will quote that later on. So that's going to have a big impact on the development of a struggling country. That just came from independence in 1965 and 71, when we have our full independence. And of course, the host country where we are all going also, the conflict will come because the resources, competition of jobs, competition of institutions like NHS in the UK, for example, and any other things, pressure, the to ask of people to accept you because you come in with a foreign culture, many tensions there, which is so important. But the individual also, as I said, a lot of our young people, yes, they escape and they're in Europe and they're making fantastic contribution, which we are proud of. but at what cost? That has to be. No country will develop, by exporting your human resources to other places permanently. That's not the way, and it's not the so far a confirmed way of how countries develop. So maybe that will change in our situation. But once again, we have Musa Sumare said, and Dr. Nick Morris thanks, and Sana, my own brother, says, thank you, Dr. and Ebrima, once again for your time. The last time Dr. Morris came on the show was incredible, and we have heard and learned a lot from him. Sana says again, and it was fascinating to hear about how many brothers were living in the UK in the early days. I particularly enjoy one story where one of my brothers asked Dr. Nick Morris, where is Mecca? Not laughing at the concept, but he's a fascinating man. And Kara Jalla, so Jallo also is saying her greetings, or yes, her greetings to you. So, Doctor, we're going to go ahead. We're going to dig into these things and see. But UK particularly, and people kind of fascinated, to come to UK. Why do you think so many people wish to come to UK in particular, especially from we see the influx of people into France, and France is, as a developed country, a bigger country, economic ranking might be even higher than UK if I can remember. But why not France? Why they always want to come to cross and come to UK?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's a question that I put. I think we're going to talk a little bit later about some of my experiences in the so-called jungle in Calais. But it was a question that I put to people, refugees in the jungle in Calais. I asked them, why do you particularly want to come to the UK? Because they were risking lives and limbs to cross the channel from Calais to Dover in the UK, and many of them drowning in their attempts to get to the UK. Why do you particularly want to come to the UK, I would ask them. And they gave three reasons. The first reason was, well, because of course, English is an international language. And even though I come from Afghanistan or Syria or wherever, they said, when I was at school, I learned a little bit of English, and I know that if I get to England, I will be able to get by with the small amount of English that I speak. Whereas here in France, I don't speak any French at all, and I won't be understood by anybody. So that is one reason. The second reason that they gave was because we know that we will find compatriots in your country. Every country in the world is represented in the UK. Every country in the world, I would argue, probably is represented in London alone, and maybe even in Bristol. And therefore we know that even though we have come from Syria or from Iraq, when we get to the UK, we know we will be able to meet people from our country who will be able to give us advice, support, and help when we first arrive in the UK. The third reason they gave, which makes me now weep slightly, was because the UK is considered globally to be the most welcoming of countries. You welcomed the Jews fleeing the Nazis from in Nazi Germany. You welcomed the Ugandan Asians fleeing from Idi Amin, the Idi Amin regime in Uganda in the 1970s. You welcomed the Vietnamese boat people fleeing the Vietnam War in 1975. You have a reputation in the UK as being the most welcoming of countries. The reason I weep is because I went to the jungle in Calais on two occasions. The first occasion, this was in 2016. The first occasion was prior to the referendum on whether we should Brexit or not. And the second occasion was after the referendum, when the decision had been taken that we should leave the European Union. And when I ask that same question of people, whether they see the UK as being a welcoming country, they were beginning to have two minds. We're not sure perhaps that you are as welcoming as we thought you were, because you've now decided to leave the European Union. And it was a decision that really upset me terribly, that decision that we should leave the European Union. And I think it has damaged our reputation as an international country. So, but those were the three reasons that people gave for particularly wanting to come to the UK.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. We have to firmly put to people that migrations. Even our poorest Gambia, there are a lot of migrants from all over the place. That are in the Gambia. We can only quote Senegal for now because according to a research commission in 2018 by the Directorate General of Senegalese Abroad, the DGSE, they claim that 19.6% of their 643,640 Senegalese migrants all over the world, 126,150 lived in the Gambia. And this excludes the Sierra Leoneans. This excludes the Nigerian, the Malians, and all over who are settling down in the Gambia. So probably, compared to Gambians in the UK, there's about nearly 36,279. We have about 126,150 Senegalese living in the Gambia. So that's about, Gambia have, about 5 times more Senegalese than you have Gambians in Europe. So, if you're talking about migration, I know, it's about because of the media and all those things, movement of people from Africa to Europe is captured. But, there is a lot of migration, as I said, and we have, when Sierra Leonean war broke, most of them came to Gambia. I met a lot of Sierra Leoneans here who are with the Gambian passport, because they were refugees in the Gambia before they were evacuated to come to other European countries. So yes, other countries like Gambia and even Guinea also has their problems. In Ivory Coast also, some of them migrated to the Gambia and they took it from there and were able to go to other European countries from the Gambia. So we have a lot of, and as in many places, it does create some tensions here and there.
But that raises another question, Ebrima, and that is the whole question of the legacy of colonialism. Because while you're telling me that there are many Senegalese who are coming to or migrating to the Gambia, should we still be talking about migration? Because actually what you're talking about, aren't you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there are people of different tribal groups who are coming together, whether they're Mandinkas or Wolofs or whatever. And they don't necessarily perhaps see themselves as migrating from one country to another. They see themselves as moving to another part of the wider family, because they happen to be of the same tribal origins, and so on. So, the legacy of colonialism, I think, is appalling. That, the colonial past just simply drew lines on the map and said, we will call this bit the Gambia and this bit Senegal, and we'll give Senegal to the French, and we'll give the Gambia to the British, and the British will rule, and so it raises that whole question of the horrors of colonialism.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Definitely. And I think we will go back, and at some days I will bring you here. We will talk about, the famous partitioning on Africa and Germany and the impact that have on the people of Africa. Normally, Gambia and Senegal should not talk about, migrants and who cross the border, who is it, because they are all, Senegambia should be the same. Gambia is, famously shrouded into Senegal. So, but it's just crazy because when people travel from New Zealand and Australia, they're not migrant in England, even though, by law, but nobody, when they say migrant, they're talking about, African and people, or people from Asia or other places. So it's really, really interesting, even the boxing of the name migrant and what it entails. If you come from Canada or Australia or New Zealand, whether you are going to be called as a migrant and all those things, that's another discussion we are going to have at some point. So, but it is equally important. Once again, I have my own wife here, son Sonko, and say thanks, Ebrima, for the good work you're doing for your country. And Junior BT, my own brother, a fantastic program hosted by EB, who broke all obstacles to achieve his goals in education as a migrant. What a living legend for the young. Yes, Doctor, my own brother has been too kind, so I don't want to finish all that anyway. So yes, but thank you so much, really. Doctor, but you went all over the place. I know you know no intention, from I'm very, very interested about Papua New Guinea, because I read that book and sometimes get emotional how you deal with the situation when you are a young Dr. Nick. But what is your attitude, to refugees? But Doctor, your situation is unique. I'm fascinated to know that your dad was bringing people into your home who might be learning English and all those things, but these are foreigners anyway. And by the way, also there's a lot of English people who are settled in the Gambia, Doctor. You cannot believe the amount of retired British citizens who are doing businesses. Some of them are even employed there in the poorest of in the Gambia. So I was talking to my neighbor. I said, you will not believe when you go to Gambia the amount of British people you have, and some of them I met will tell me, "This is home. Where do you want me to go?" They call Gambia home. So it's both ways. It's not only Gambians coming to Britain, but you have a lot of British people who settle in the Gambia.
Yes.
Doing businesses, and most of the time when they have their businesses, Gambian businesses suffer, they can't compete, and many, many other things. So, but I think Gambians are English are tolerant people, but Gambians are equally very, very welcoming.
Absolutely, no question.
Unless you want to be their chiefs and their president, I think they will compete with you. So, Doctor, what is your attitude towards refugees? What your attitude towards them?
My attitude towards refugees was an attitude that I developed particularly when I was working in Cambodia, following the fall of the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot and all that. I came to the conclusion that refugees, by definition, are exceptional people. They have witnessed appalling conflict and atrocities in their countries of origin. They have undertaken perilous journeys across continents, and they have absolutely no idea what the future holds for them or the reception that they will receive in their final destination. They must be exceptional people, that they are taking these enormous risks, albeit to escape the conflicts that they are leaving behind, but at the same time leaving behind everything that they have known and loved in their countries of origin and their cultures, to a future that is completely unknown and uncertain. So I believe that they are exceptional people. I think particularly of when I was in Cambodia. At the time that I was leaving the Cambodia, a number of Cambodians came to me and said, "Could you help us? We want to leave our country because the situation here is so dire." And cutting a long story short, a group of us from working for Oxfam gave them sufficient money for them to be able to travel overland to the refugee camps on the border with Thailand. And they spent as much as a year, 18 months in those refugee camps. And then they contacted us back in the UK and said, "Is there anything you could do to help us to get to the UK?" And cutting a long story short again, we managed to get through a friendly MP, Member of Parliament, we managed to get visas for about 10 young Cambodians to come from the refugee camps to live in the UK. 2 of them in particular got married, and they lived in a small town called Witney near Oxford. And Kate, my wife, and I would visit this couple, Sumali and Bority, on a regular basis. We'd go and visit them in their home, and they would come and visit us in Marlborough, and they'd spend Christmas with us in Marlborough, and so on. And they gave birth to 2 daughters, and the daughters grew up. And there was one year when we had a Christmas card from Bority and Sumali to say, "Dear Nick and Kate, we thought you'd be interested to know that Tida, our eldest daughter, has just won a scholarship to Oxford University." And I was just amazed. I thought, this is just wonderful that she had won this scholarship to Oxford University. And again, having left Oxford, she then worked for the Department for International Development. And she worked both in Sierra Leone, and then she worked in Vietnam for the Department for International Development. So here were people who had come from absolutely nothing, escaping the most terrible conflict in their country, and bringing up daughters in the UK. And here they were now leading really, really important and vital lives. And I use that story very often when I'm talking to people about the fact that I believe that refugees are exceptional people because of everything they have been through and because of the complete uncertainty of their future. They are exceptional people.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think this country is an exceptional country. Many people came here with no education. The struggle is never easy with all the barriers. You don't know what to expect, and different barriers, hurdles here and there. But the country accommodate us. Things are not 100% straightforward. But this country, we have to be thankful to God that we have stability, we have education, we have access and understanding, and we are contributing here and there to the development of our country. It's a young country, that country, 1965, and full government in 1971 to here. Even in human beings' life, that's not much anyway, and things are not straightforward. But really, a diaspora and people, about nearly 36,000 Gambians and Gambian-born people in the UK, majority have good experience to tell. And I'm saying because Gambia has been in the Britain has been in the Gambia since 1660 something, so they know Gambia, and just that we are a dot on the map, but we are very significant to the slave trade, and the River Gambia has played a significant role to the development of Britain. Once again, we have Dr. Nick Maurice here, a retired physician from Wiltshire, an honorary citizens of Gunjur. I have to emphasize that he's a citizen of Gunjur, and also he is the founder, or one of the founders, of Marlborough Brand Group, that has a fantastic and one of the unique and successful link with Gunjur-Marlborough link. So we have to celebrate him. We have to acknowledge his contribution to not only in Gunjur, but the whole Gambia. Because, Doctor, I cannot finish this interview. We have a lot of questions to go, but we will come to the mango thing, because we are in the mango season. And yesterday, I was listening to somebody says the mangoes get so wasted to the extent that even the cows become very selective. The small ones that are not juicy, they don't even want to touch them, and I know the role that you play. You try your best, but if we have time, we will come to that. So, Doctor, many people, including unaccompanied children, are fleeing conflict in their countries of origin and risking and sometimes losing their life crossing the channel in flimsy boats between France and UK in an attempt to seek safety. What do you see as the solution, long-term solution to this problem?
I have to say that I despair. I mean, it's estimated that there are 65 million refugees worldwide. And I often ask myself, what is the role of the United Nations in working with countries in which there is conflict, which is causing so many people to flee their countries? The United Nations seems to me to be at the moment a somewhat sterile organization. I believe it could be doing very, very much more to be solving some of these problems that are causing people to flee their countries and escape conflict. As far as the UK is concerned, I believe that the current attitude of the UK government and the Home Office in particular is appalling. I mean, it is just desperate that we've got these young children fleeing their countries of origin, trying to cross the channel in these flimsy boats and risking their lives, and many of them actually drowning in the channel between the UK and France. And it doesn't appear that the UK government and the French government are putting their heads together and saying, what can we do to sort this problem out at that level? But at a higher level, why are we not exploring the reasons why these people are leaving their countries of origin and tackling those original problems and discussing why there are these conflicts in these countries and trying to help solve some of those conflicts. I think that the problem with Brexit is that there is now a climate of distrust between France and the UK, particularly France under Macron. I don't think Macron trusts the UK government, and therefore it's very difficult for them to sit down together, the UK government and the French government, to ask the question, why are these people leaving their countries of origin in the first place? And what can we do to support them, that they are prepared to risk their lives in trying to get to the UK? I think the other major issue, of course, is that the current UK government is reducing the amount of aid that it is giving to countries around the world. It's talking about reducing the aid from 0.7% of GDP to 0.5% of GDP. And the impact that this is having internationally has got to be huge. And that is going to create more people considering migrating to other countries. And I despair at the attitude of the current government in the UK, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Doctor. That's really worrying for if UK want to maintain the leadership that they are enjoying with all the influences and their own benefit. I don't think it is a good move to exit from Europe and to cut the international aid to countries like the Gambia, who's been there, and a lot of people don't know the contribution that Gambia and some of the British colonies made to the developments of this country here and there. But their influence in the world and whatever they are worried about, from terrorism, from security, and many things, those are going to come and haunt them. I think if they continue, on what they are, because they cannot be. This is an island, a small country. They can't stand by themselves for the rest of their life. They need partners, and it doesn't make sense anyway. Your closest and biggest partners, the security in Europe, and you just slough yourself off and want to be all by yourself. That's really a silly move for a country that is hugely respected and developed in the name of UK. Once again, greetings to all of you all over the world, our viewers. Michelle Jaobanna, my own wife, said good evening to you. And I have my intellectual brother here, Professor Noah Sise, who said, good evening and keep up the good work, my friend. Doctor, and I understand back in 2016, you were at the Calais jungle in refugee camp not one but might be twice in France. And tell us, me and my viewers, about your experience of the so-called jungle and what is life, if there is any life, if there is anything we can call life in the jungle, in the camp.
Well, I have to say I found it a shattering experience being in, and I don't like the word jungle. I think it was a very unfortunate term to use about a place where refugees from so many different countries, from Eritrea, from Syria, from Sudan, from Ethiopia, from Afghanistan, were housed in this camp, which, by the way, is estimated at the time that I was there to contain about 10,000 refugees, of which 1,200 were thought to be unaccompanied children. And they were escaping the conflicts that they had experienced in their countries of origin. They had journeyed overland, and they had taken to Calais, and their hopes for the future were there in Calais. But I found it an extraordinary experience. And my role there was as a very retired doctor. I was working for a charity by the name of Care for Calais. It was a British charity. And I have to say that most of the volunteers that were working in that camp were from the UK. There weren't that many French volunteers supporting these refugees. They were mainly people from the UK who were bringing food across in large quantities. They were bringing blankets across. They were bringing tents across for the refugees to sleep under, and so forth. And helping in lots of different ways. But my particular role was to be there as a doctor, helping to support these refugees through illness of various kinds.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And I have Mohammed Dabo, my nephew. Say thank you so much, Uncle. And Idris Janneh, my own brother, says good evening, and bro, and my friend and my in-law, Fakeba Lipo Bojang, says good evening, my comrades, and my own brother again, Scattred. Janneh says very paramount topic to discuss. Thank you, all of you, wherever you are. Let's share this program so that we can be honored. We can really be be students in the university of one of the top human being, intellectual and diverse, who is so aware, because all over the world he went there voluntarily to contribute and give it to humanity, and that's how this world should be. Doctor, I'm not going to use the jungle again. I'm going, I saw a lot of people does use it anyway, but it should not be a jungle. These are human beings who suffered a lot, and it cost them a lot. Doctor, I have to emphasize one thing. Either illegal or legal migration, this is not easy. And if things are all square and equal, nobody will want to leave your family, your country, because I know how connected I am to Gambia. I know what I feel when I reach Gunjur, no matter how poor, and the difference is huge from between Gunjur and Leeds. But the happiness, the connection I have to Gunjur is just going to be more than natural. If there's anything natural I can use, I will use it. The feeling I have, and the moment I want to come back to Leeds, the feeling that I have is a feeling of rejection. Is just a thinking, how can I bring Leeds, to Gunjur, so that I don't have to leave my Gunjur. And the more I'm getting older, the more I am realizing how it's not good to leave permanently your home country and migrate for good. Maybe my kids will disagree with me, but what I'm learning now is, really at the long run, is good for everybody. You can go out and have a little bit of time outside learning and experience and give away to the communities. But at the end of the day, you have to. But the one-way traffic where you travel and you cannot go back to your country, that's one of the most difficult things that maybe the people in the host country will understand. But how can they? Because they're not migrants. The Calais camp is closed now. And I'm not sure, because they will close it and people will converge and all those things, trying to jump and hide in different trucks to get into UK. Do you think it is a good thing that these camps has been closed down if the conditions were so abhorrent, when you were there? Do you think so?
No, I don't think it was a good thing that the camp was closed down. I think it was a very bad thing. Basically, what happened was that the French decided, because there was a lot of hostility towards the camp by French people living in the locality, they didn't like the fact that on their back doorstep they had this camp full of refugees. They hated it. And they put pressure on the French government, who then decided that they were going to set up what were called centres d'accueil et orientation. In other words, in English, centres of welcome and orientation. There were about, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was about 25 of these centres of orientation and welcome that were all over France. And the people, within a very short space of time, within a week, the people who were living in the camp in Calais were told, you are now going to be moved to these different centres around France. They were, to a certain extent, in the camp. There had been the development of a sense of community, and people got to know each other well from different countries, and they were, collaborating and in thinking about how they could get out of this terrible impasse that they were in. And now they were being scattered to different parts of France. And of course, what happened was, when they arrived in the centres of welcome and orientation, that they began then to feel, we are in a completely strange environment here, and we want to get back to the north coast of France, because we want to attempt to get to the UK again. And now we're down in the south of France. We're going to migrate again up to the north of France. So what you have now in France is different scattered rough camps all over the north of France, in very much worse, people finding themselves in very much worse conditions than they were when they were all under, as it were, one roof in the so-called jungle in Calais. They're now scattered along the North French coast and living under very, very difficult, much worse conditions than they were originally. So it's been a nightmare closing the camp down. It was quite the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, quite wrong thing to do, Doctor. I know you came across different nationalities in the camp, and when you ask answering the next question, maybe we can talk about some of the nationalities that are in France. Is there any particular moment or story or stories from the refugees you meet that stood out and maybe stay with you and will stay with you forever?
Yes, absolutely. Whenever I think about the time that I spent in the camp, and by the way, working as a doctor, I was working out of a little tiny caravan, and I had an Afghan interpreter who would interpret when people came into to see me individually. They would come into this caravan and they would tell me through the interpreter what their problems were. And by and large, those problems were related to the fact that they had fallen off the backs of trucks, because many of them were trying to cross the channel by hiding themselves under trucks that were transporting food and other equipment across the channel from France to the UK. And the refugees would hide under these trucks, and many of them would fall off the trucks and would injure themselves as a result. But I will never forget this one child, aged 10, called Ahmed. I asked him, I said, Ahmed, tell me, why did you come to Calais? Aged 10, where do you come from? He said, I come from Afghanistan. I said, and why did you come to Calais? My father came to Calais 5 years ago, and he managed to get to the UK, and he lived in London, and he worked in London. And then the UK government deported him back to Afghanistan. And when he reached Afghanistan, he was shot by the Taliban within a week of arriving back in Kabul. He was shot by the Taliban. And my uncle came to me and said, Ahmed, it is not safe for you to remain in Afghanistan because you are your father's son and the Taliban are likely to get hold of you. And therefore, I have sold a plot of land, and with the money, I'm going to take you to the border with Iran, and I'm going to hand you over to some people who will transport you across Asia and Europe to Calais. And I said to Ahmed, I said, tell me, how long did it take you to get from Afghanistan to Calais? He said, it took me 4 months. I said, 4 months? And which countries did you travel through? I don't know. And how long have you been in Calais? I've been in Calais 7 months. And how many times have you tried to get to the UK? And he said, I climb on the backs of trucks about 9 times every week in order to try and get to the UK. This was a 10-year-old boy telling me this story about what he was trying to achieve. I mean, that story just remained with me forever. I shall never forget listening to this boy telling me this story. And tragically, because he had no method of communication, I wanted to wrap him up in my bag and take him to the UK with me, but that was absolutely out of the question. And I wasn't even able to he didn't have a mobile phone. I wasn't able to communicate with him after I returned to the UK. So I have no idea what has happened to Ahmed.
Wow, that's really, 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 really emotional, and I have to be strong not to cry, because a lot of kids and unaccompanied kids all over the place,
yeah,
were forced, because before they had this problem, in their countries, they stay put, they didn't move, and that needs to be taken into account, but unless people are not seeing anything. But I think politicians panders to the clamor of their population sometimes, and just but these are. But doctor, in the view of that, but we have go. I have to acknowledge our two Rekinter, my own wife and my sister Ajifatu Jang. Say, well done, my dear brother. Proud of you, Ibi. Very interesting program. Doctor, according to UNDSA, data indicates that in 1995, not when I almost finished my O level, there were only 38,385 Gambian migrants globally. globally. That's 1995, just before the, when military junta took over. And that the number rose to 90,254. That's about nearly 135% by 2015. So, when Jawara was there, Gambians don't go out, they stay, or they go and stay before, before the military came and start, misbehaving and killing people and doing all kind of stuff in the country. So this mass migration, and based on the data from the National Statistic Authority and the United Nations, it is safe to say that over 100,000 Gambian migrants and refugees live in Europe, constituting at least 60% of the global Gambian migrant, the Gambian diaspora. That's how things are bad and the number of the Gambian living in the European Union, that's EU, excluding the United Kingdom. And that's crazy, because it's as of June, as I read before, in 2020, there were about 22,840 Gambians in Italy, 19,849 in Spain, 15,535 in Germany. The UK, as I said, says is about 36,279. That's in 2002. And according to UNDSA data from 2019 indicates that 8,653 Gambians live in the Nordic country. Considering the small size of the Gambia, I think you partly answered this. The impact in that small country should be really, really concerning, when you have, and these are people who are in a privileged position, who are highly educated, unless, those who are now, going through the barriers and going through back way to Italy and all those. We know what happened to many of them. In this, what do you think, how can the EU, excluding Britain now, and Britain and the Gambia, what can they do to work together to prevent, or reduce or fighting against illegal migration, because this is to the interest of all of us. If we stem this migration, of course, the Gambian government has to play a key role also there. Maybe you will not want to speak about Gambian government, but what do you think the role should be, so that, we can, kind of reduce the amount of people going through all these kind of things to the detriment of both the EU and the countries that our people are coming from?
Well, there is no substitute, surely, is there, for conversations between the relevant people in the different countries. And I mean, I believe very strongly that there needs to be a conversation leading to, for example, an aid policy between the UK government, led by the High Commissioner for the UK in the Gambia, and the Gambian government. What can we do? What can the UK do in order to encourage people to remain in the Gambia rather than feeling that they've got to leave the Gambia? What development has to take place in the Gambia in order to encourage people to remain in that wonderful country that I love so dearly? Those sorts of conversations don't seem to be taking place at the present time. And I think it raises another question, and that is, what is the role of the diaspora in encouraging that kind of conversation? I mean, you are in many ways, you're in a very powerful position. And if there was some way in which the Gambian diaspora could collaborate, whether they are from the Scandinavian countries, whether they're from the US or the UK, is there not some way in which we could all collaborate in order to really put pressure on the Gambian government to encourage development in such a way, development in terms of education, in terms of health, whatever, in terms of business development and so forth, develop a strategy for the next 10 to 20 years that would encourage young Gambians to remain in their country of origin in the country that they love, the country that they, in which they have been brought up, in which they've been educated, and so on. Is there not some way in which we could all have that sort of conversation? What needs to be done in order to encourage people to remain in their country of origin, remain with everybody and everything that they love, rather than feeling that they've got, for example, to take this perilous back way to Europe, crossing the Sahara, finding yourselves in Libya, being abused by the Libyans, and then getting into these terribly traumatic situations, climbing into dinghies and crossing the Mediterranean, and many drowning at sea. I mean, the situation in the Gambia must be so bad that people are persuaded to do that, and thinking that, the streets of London are paved in gold, when in many instances they're not. And we know that many people from the diaspora actually suffer quite a lot when they get to the UK. We need to have that conversation. And I think that somehow the Gambian diaspora needs to collaborate in order to do that, to have that conversation, and to help to develop a strategy for encouraging people to remain in the Gambia rather than taking these very perilous and risky routes.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think the diaspora contribution will be immense. But the civil society organizations have no funding from the EU. For some reason, EU are very conservative with their transfer of money, either directly to Gambian government or the international institution or their own institutions that are in the country. And they don't finance the civil society. That could have a lot of impact. But if the national development plan before this coalition government disintegrated, it could be deduced that the strategic priority relating to migration and asylum were managing irregular migration, maintaining stability, development of cooperation, investment and job, and the diaspora's role in page 1 of 6 of the National Development Plan on critical enabler of Gambian development. The third or the 7th enabler is enhancing the role of the Gambian diaspora in national development. And page 236 to 239 provide a policy and sustainable analysis in diaspora in development, and page 112 to 119 presented the specifics of the Gambian diaspora strategy with program actions and 4-year output target. And one of the flagship priorities is migration and sustainable development in the Gambia project. But I know you're not the right person to talk about Gambian government, and I can go on and on the failure of African governments and their leadership, and that's so important. Doctor, but we cannot conclude this program because we are in the mango season and we are in the raining season in the Gambia. And I sometimes when you hear, you switch off, you forgot, you forget about some of the things that you see. And probably when I was in Gambia, the spoil of cascade of water of mangoes or numberless of mangoes all over the place, which is not good to. It's not very, very nice to watch when they rot and all those things, the flies and all those things, But if you want to sum up the failure of our leadership is the wastage, especially in mangoes, in fisheries, where the Chinese will come and do fish meal when we can do fish meal by ourselves, because it's not a complex thing to do when we have all these rich people and they cannot do it. But you initiated, or I heard that you want to initiate something to do with the mango so that you can stop the wastage. What went wrong? What is the situation? And is that project, what I heard, is it abandoned? Is it finished, or is it that it cannot go through? Go ahead, Doctor.
Well, as you have said, I even met the president, Adama Barrow, and I actually said to him, Mr. President, are you aware that you are sitting on a gold mine? And he looked at me in astonishment and said, well, what do you mean we're sitting on a gold mine? And I said, well, you're sitting on a gold mine of mangoes. Mr. President, you will know from your own experience of working in the UK that you can buy a single mango for £1.20 in Tesco or in Waitrose, whereas here a mango is worth absolutely nothing and there's lying rotting on the ground. And if only we could get our act together, the mango industry could be a really, really important resource for the Gambia, if the mangoes could be properly exported. And I had meetings with UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, in the Gambia. I had 2 meetings with them, and they said, yes, we must definitely do something about this. But I have to say this was before the pandemic hit. And because I haven't been able to get back to the Gambia, I haven't been able to follow up those conversations. But as far as I'm aware, they have not taken any notice of that at all, and nothing has happened. Having said that, there is certainly some exportation of mangoes. There's no question that there are mangoes that are being exported from the Gambia to the UK, but much, much more could be done if only there was proper leadership and a proper recognition of the potential for this very, very important resource. I love mangoes. And, you know, Kate, my wife, goes shopping and she very regularly will buy a mango for me because she knows how much I love mangoes. I mean, to be serious, really, they are an important resource, and many people in the UK love mangoes, but of course they don't grow in Europe, and so there is the Gambia sitting on this potential gold mine, if only the Gambian government could get its act together and promote this. Because the other thing I often say is, and it's true, is that whereas other mangoes are being imported to the UK from other countries, by and large, those other countries are much, much further away, and therefore it costs considerably more to import those mangoes from those countries, whether it be India or wherever. Whereas the Gambia, being that much closer, it costs considerably less to import mangoes from the Gambia. So it requires proper business leadership in the Gambia to get this underway.
Yeah, Doctor, fascinating, really, and thinking about the West in the country. You know, I cried what we can do, and and how useless we are to recognize what we can do, and we are looking at political line and not to think about overall how can we use up the resources of the Gambia. As you said, it's a gold mine of mangoes in the Gambia. Mango pulp, dry mango, you can name it. People can turn mango now into anything else, and yet still we have all these mangoes that are being wasted, and during the dry season and animals goes hungry, so we have to have the solution to this if we have the political will. The small amount of export that is coming is foreigners coming and recolonize our economy, because for example, the Carafiles and all those things are not Gambians. They will come and they will give them the land and they will buy these and use the local women. And the money don't stay in the Gambia, it goes back to their countries of origin. So the export is Gambian export, but the money is not Gambian money, like the Chinese are doing with the fish meal. Dr. Nick, you are an honorary citizen of Gunjur. Gunjur is crying. And when Gunjur cries, it's just like when they say America sneeze, the whole of the world catches cold. When Gunjur cry, everywhere in the Gambia cries, and Chinese are bleeding that coastal place, excoriating in large numbers with a huge amount of disrespect, taking the feedstocks to turn it into fish meals, and go and feed poultries and fish whatever farms and all those things. But the Gambia now, people are now depending to my dismay, on chickens that are exported from Holland with all the health implications to put it on their rice because they cannot afford bonga, our local chalo, and then the amount of proteins, and the impact that will have on the health of our people. The life expectancy is getting, is going back. But how can we not relate this to our fish and all those things, and the economic, what we can have about on them? This is fascinating. I mean, you don't have to go deeper, but you are a Gunjurian. Nobody can take that from you, and this is a big worry for us. And what's your take there?
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely understand that. And I have been very concerned for some years about the fishing industry and the impact that the Chinese is having on, it's having on the economics of Gunjur in particular, because so much of Gunjur's income was coming from the fishing industry, but also on the livelihoods of the women who are doing the looking after the fish and selling the fish and smoking the fish and so on. Their livelihoods are being completely undermined by this Chinese intervention. It's desperate, and I've told the story many times before, but I'll never forget the time when I was in Gunjur down on the beach, and there were a number of women who had managed to smoke some fish, and they were selling their fish to a truck driver. And I saw the truck driver and I spoke to him, and I said, just as a matter of interest, tell me, where are you taking these fish, these smoked fish that these women have sold to you? And he said, I'm taking them to Nigeria. I said, Nigeria? You're taking these smoked fish from the Gambia to Nigeria? For goodness sake, Nigeria's got its own coastline. Ghana is right next door. It's got its own coastline. Why on earth are you having to take fish all the way from the Gambia? Why do the Nigerians want Gambian fish? His response was, you don't understand, do you? And I said, no, I don't understand. He said, the Chinese have taken all the fish from the waters of Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast. All the fish have disappeared, and now the fish are disappearing from the Gambia. I just think it's just desperate. And again, you wonder why the heads of government of the different countries of West Africa cannot get together and decide on a policy that is going to prevent this from happening. And by the way, I mean, you mentioned that the fish is made into fish meal correctly. But what happens to that fish meal? It goes back to China. It's not being used in the Gambia. It goes back to China. So, I mean, I just think it's outrageous. It's just terrible. Really is.
It is outrageous. My own in-law, Pam Mbuna Bojan, says, always a pleasure to hear from the dedicated Dr. Nick Maurice. Gunjur as a community cannot thank you enough for the opportunity you gave to so many to improve their lives. May you continue to enjoy good health. And my own brother and friend, Sehu Jabi, yes, he says he's late today. And yes, we still are. We are at the closing stage. Dr. Gunjur is very appreciative, and Gambia is appreciative of many.
I am deeply thankful for everything that I have gained from the relationship with the people in Gunjur. I mean, I consider Gunjur to be my second home. And as I always say, I have met with a social wealth in Gunjur that to a very large extent, I think, has disappeared in our society. I love Gunjur. I love the people of Gunjur. I particularly, of course, love the family of my dear beloved brother, late brother, Mankabang Toure. I just feel that they are part of my extended family. And and I have gained so much from the people of Gunjur. It has been a mutual relationship and mutually beneficial.
Dr. tell us you're not going to abandon the Mango project. Post-coronavirus, you are going to pick this up and we will see, because even if we are going to start it from a small project where we can squeeze the mango juice and put it in bottles that we can freeze, since now electricity, even though erratic a bit, but solar panels are there where we can start something with the mangoes than to see the wastage. And people are hungry, we know the vitamin, that are in that can contribute to the health of people, and mangoes are being wasted within 3 months. Tons and tons and tons of mangoes get wasted. Even if we can preserve some of that to next month, it will save a lot. When we were young, we don't go for rice because we will go into the wilderness the whole day, because we can just walk into the mango tree and just pluck one and eat it. Nobody want to go home because mango is there. And now this wastage and all those things. I know government might be, this is not, we hope we have a better government come in December, so that they can think some of these things, because I know EU is giving us a lot of money, but I don't understand why the Gambian tuna should be open free by European Union and give us peanuts, and all these tunas is being now, they netting everything out, so I can't understand our government, and even though I understand the goodwill, because without EU support, Gambia cannot go, but to support us and take all the tuna from our sea, and those they melt my heart. Please, tell us we're going to start something with this mango thing. And I'm challenging the diaspora Gambian. Some of them are good enough, they have wealthy enough, they have experience. Just start something, no matter how small it is. Just start something, use solar panels, and go into that mango business. We have dry mango here. We can eat it in UK. The mangoes are £1 here. Our juice and all those succulent mangoes are wasting. And we think we are poor. Doctor, that's the irony of it. When we have the land, we have all this mango, and Gambians' mentality think they are poor. They have to leave, and leave those resources there to be wasted by people who don't understand anything. And once again, I have Mr. Keba Sedi, my own brother, says, I have to meet Dr. Nick, but I have had a lot of wonderful gestures and life-changing help to people in Gunjur. God bless you, sir. Lamin Toure says, thank you, Dr. Nick. You are a family. And Lamin comes, my own brother. The Manjam Fin says, it's criminal. The corrupt leaders of the poorest country who could feed their own are killing their own through filling their pockets with Chinese money. Sajo Jazi, my own wife, says, hello, doctor. It's Sajo. You will remember Sajo Jazi, Mafode Jazi, is the late Mafode Jazi's daughter. Good to hear you again. Thank you so much. And Permambuna says, you are looking great, Bitang. It's been very, very generous, And doctor, yes, let's see the Gunjurians. What can we do? We can have our own fish meal. We can have our own small mango factory. I was reading the story of Mark and Spencer. These were cobblers. They start making shoes, and today is somewhere else. I think, generally we have to think, I think our mango, as you said, is a gold mine for our country, even for political class. And of course, our vegetables. There's no vegetable garden. When you go there, you will cry. Yes, go ahead, doctor, about your plan for this mango thing.
Well, two things that have occurred to me while you've been speaking. The first is that I wonder whether there would be any value in having a conversation with the Gambian High Commissioner in London, whether a group of us could meet with the Gambian High Commissioner to raise this question of the mango industry with him or her, but I imagine it's a him, to raise this question and say, would it not be possible for the Gambian High Commissioner to have a conversation with the Department for International Development here in the UK, to have that conversation about the potential for investing in a mango industry in the Gambia? So at that sort of political level here in the UK, I believe that something could be done. And secondly, in the Gambia, if I were to go to the Gambia to raise this question again, when I have recovered from a hip operation that I'm about to have, and so on. And when the coronavirus has disappeared a bit more and it's safer to travel, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it, if a group of representatives of the diaspora from maybe just from the UK were to come with me with the sole idea of having conversations with key people in the Gambia about how we might develop a strategy for the development of the mango industry in the Gambia.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And I think I have my brother Keba said is here. We have the acting High Commissioner's number, and I spoke with him these days. He's the acting one. I don't know whether he will be there as a permanent position. I think we will, after you post your operation, we will have a discussion with him, because he is very, very willing. He's kind of a bit enthusiastic to meet Gambians, and we will have him so that we can discuss about issues to talk about this. But Gambians, especially those who are in the coastal areas, need to start thinking about what can they do with their oranges. What can we do with I was watching the lime garden in Turkey, and what the amount of money lime juice is created now is so crazy. And our mangoes and our oranges and many other things that we grow are there, and we kind of seems a bit out of touch to think about anything to develop those things. And as you said, these are gold mine for Gambia, the fish, the mangoes, and the oranges. Thank you so much, Doctor. Your last word, and say hi to our viewers all over the place. It's been fantastic. It been really an open university talking to you. And we will have you here this time around. Maybe you will going to be the host and ask us about our experience as diasporas. And these will all inform us through our own mouths. Maybe our brothers will glean one or two things in the Gambia and know that it's not all rosy. We want to go home, really speaking, if conditions are all fine. So, but it's only the positive side that they are saying. But you have to have the balance. You have to have both the stories on the table for people to consider and make the informed decisions. Once again, Doctor, go ahead. Give us your final word.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. I feel it's a great privilege to have been invited to appear on this conversation, and I've really enjoyed it very much indeed. It's made me think a great deal, and Ebrima, I'm particularly grateful to you for inviting me to appear in this special interview on migration. It's been a huge privilege, and I'm only sorry that I'm not able to see all the wonderful friends that I know who may be listening in on our conversation. I would love to be able to see them in person, no, I look forward to the time when we can all meet up, and particularly, for example, those of us that happen to be in the UK, when we can perhaps have a big meeting in Bristol, and we can have a discussion about how we might take things forward and develop a strategy. So thank you very much indeed. I feel it's been a great privilege and a great honor to be invited to speak, and I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you once again to our myriad of our listeners all over the world, and special thanks to you. And our appreciations are in order. Always supporting us, always being with us in this journey to educate ourselves and to educate our youth, so that we can have a reflection, reflective, when you do academic course now, they call the reflection, where we can reflect and write something and see what can we do, what power do we have to change things. Because it seems if we are sitting waiting for our political leaders, we're going to be here for long time. And I think, mass migration with only one ticket is not the way forward for that small country. It's not the way forward for us. Majority, some people might just going to be out of the loop, but majority are going to struggle. And what impact that will have if we have all our human resources, our energy, about nearly 14 to 24 years old in the Gambia is about nearly 70% of our population, or 65 if I am right. For those people to just selfly give themselves to to blue waters in the Atlantic, to either make it or not make it. If they have the audacity, to go through all the Saharas and the Atlantic to come to Europe, if we can if we can harness their energy, and their fear to live in the Gambia,
absolutely.
we can drive it into energy. We can drive it into energy to develop that country. But because we have the energy, 70% of your populations are youths from 14 years to 35 years. How can we harness that energy and make it into a driving force to propel Gambia's education, Gambia's development? Thank you once again, Doctor. Thank you to our in Janneh and all and technician behind the scene. And thank you all, our listeners all over the world. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much.